I want you to think about a very uncomfortable question. Are you actually doing better than the average person with money, or have you simply learned to compare yourself to the wrong people? That question matters because most people are walking through life with almost no accurate picture of where they stand. They see a neighbor with a new truck, they see a friend posting vacation photos, they see someone from work buying a larger house, and because human beings are wired to compare, they begin to assume that everyone else must be doing better than they are. But in my experience, the surface picture is usually misleading. A person can look wealthy and be fragile. A person can look ordinary and be building freedom. A person can have a high income and no real wealth. A person can have a modest income and a strong financial foundation. The numbers tell the story much better than appearances do. That is why I want to walk through the financial reality of the average person. Not to shame anyone, not to make anyone feel superior, not to make anyone panic, but because accurate comparison is useful. If you do not know where average is, you cannot know whether you are behind, ahead, or simply drifting with the crowd. And in money, drifting with the crowd is usually dangerous because the crowd is not financially healthy. Most people are not operating from principles. They are operating from habits, social pressure, debt, hope, and short-term emotion. When a whole society does that at the same time, you get numbers that look normal on the surface but reveal a deeper problem underneath. So let us start with income, because that is where most people begin when they think about money. When a person receives a paycheck, the natural question is, am I earning enough? Am I above average? Am I behind? Am I doing better than other people my age? According to the data in this reference, the median weekly earnings for a full-time worker are a little over $1,000. That works out to roughly $52,000 a year before taxes. That number is important because it is not household income, it is individual income. It means that half of full-time workers earn more than that and half earn less. If you earn about $26 an hour, you are around the middle of the pack for a full-time worker. Now, many people hear $52,000 and think, that sounds manageable. But the number before taxes is not the number you live on after federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, Medicare, and other deductions. The actual take-home amount can shrink quickly depending on where you live. That $52,000 may turn into roughly $35,000 to $40,000 of money you can actually use. That is the first reality. Income is not wealth. Gross income is not spendable income, and spendable income is still not financial strength unless part of it is being kept and put to productive use. This is where most people begin to separate themselves, not by how much they earn, but by what happens after the money arrives, because a paycheck is only a flow. It comes in and it goes out. If the entire flow disappears every month, then the size of the flow matters less than people think. A person earning $52,000 and saving $5,000 may be in a stronger direction than a person earning $120,000 and saving nothing. That is one of the biggest misunderstandings in personal finance. People overvalue income and undervalue the gap between income and expenses. The gap is where freedom is created. Then we come to retirement savings, and this is where the average picture becomes more troubling. The median amount Americans have saved for retirement in the reference is about $65,000. And that figure includes people who actually have retirement accounts. About 1 out of every 4 Americans has no retirement account at all. 0, no IRA. Number 401k, no investment account dedicated to the day when work stops. They are planning, whether they realize it or not, to rely almost entirely on Social Security or on family or on continuing to work. That is not a plan. That is a dependency. It may work for a while, it may not, but it is not under your control. When I look at retirement savings, I do not just see account balances, I see time options and future vulnerability. A person with no retirement savings is not simply behind on a spreadsheet. They are highly exposed to forces they cannot control. Government policy, health costs, job market changes, inflation, family circumstances, and the ability of their body to keep earning income. The age breakdown makes the picture clearer. People under 25 may have less than $2,000 saved. That is not necessarily disastrous because they are early. The bigger question at that age is whether they are building the habit. People between 25 and 34 may have around $14,000 saved. That is better, but still a small base if they have already been working for years. It tells you that many people spend the first decade of adulthood without establishing a strong saving and investing rhythm. By the time people reach 65 and older, the median retirement balance in the reference climbs to about $88,000. $88,000 sounds like meaningful money until you convert it into income. If you followed a traditional 4% withdrawal rule, $88,000 gives you about $3,500 a year. That is less than $300 a month. $300 a month is not retirement security. It is grocery money. It is a utility bill. It is not enough to cover housing, food, healthcare, transportation, insurance, emergencies, and the rising cost of being old. This is why the retirement problem is much more serious than most people admit. People talk about retirement as if it is an age. They say, I want to retire at 65, or I want to retire early, or I will work until I cannot. But retirement is not primarily an age. Retirement is a math problem and a health problem. The math is this. How much income can your assets produce when your labor income stops? The health problem is this. Will your body and mind allow you to keep working if the math does not work? Most people do not want to answer either question until it is too late. Then they look at Social Security as the solution. And yes, Social Security is real, it can help, it is important. But it was never designed to make up for a lifetime of undersaving. In the reference, the average monthly Social Security benefit is around $1,550. That is about $18,600 a year. For some people, that may cover a portion of the basics. For others, especially in higher cost areas, it is not nearly enough. And remember, that is the average. If someone had years of low income, inconsistent work, or fewer qualifying years, the benefit can be lower. This is where people often make a dangerous assumption. They assume that because Social Security exists, retirement will somehow work itself out. But systems do not care about assumptions. Systems operate on inputs and outputs. If your retirement income is too small and your expenses are too large, the result is pressure. You can call it unfair, you can call it stressful, you can hope it changes, but the system still produces the same result. That is why I believe the intelligent person should plan as if Social Security is a support, not a foundation. If it is there, good. If it is more generous than expected, even better. But your core plan should not depend entirely on a political promise, especially when the demographics and funding pressures are visible. Now let us look at spending, because this is where many people lose the game without realizing they are playing it. According to the reference, the average American household spends about $5,577 per month. Over a full year, that is roughly $67,000 of spending. That number is extremely important. If a household spends $67,000 a year, it needs at least that much after-tax income, just to stand still, not to build wealth, not to invest meaningfully, not to get ahead, just to avoid falling backward. And the largest piece is housing. The average household spends about $1,885 per month on housing costs, including rent or mortgage, taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance. That is more than $22,000 per year just to keep a roof over the household. In many cities, that number will look low. In smaller markets, it may look high, but the principle is the same everywhere. Housing is usually the largest fixed cost, and fixed costs determine how flexible your life can be. If your housing cost is too large relative to your income, your freedom disappears. It does not matter how smart you are with small purchases. You can skip coffee, use coupons, and buy generic brands, but a bloated housing payment will still dominate the system. Food comes next. The reference gives about $691 per month for groceries and dining out. That is more than $8,000 per year. Food is interesting because it is both necessary and emotional. People need to eat, but people also use food for convenience, comfort, celebration, and avoidance. A small leak in food spending can become a large leak over time. Transportation is even more revealing. The average household spends about $913 per month on transportation. That includes car payments, insurance, gas, maintenance, and public transit. That is nearly $11,000 per year just to move from one place to another. When you combine housing and transportation, you begin to see why so many households feel trapped in the reference. Those two categories together are about $2,700 a month before food, healthcare, debt payments, childcare, taxes, saving, investing, and everything else. This is how average households get squeezed. It is not always one dramatic mistake. It is the accumulation of structural commitments. A house that is too expensive, a car payment that is too large, insurance that keeps rising, food costs that creep higher, and credit card balances that absorb the remaining margin. When the margin disappears, options disappear. Then we come to credit scores. The average FICO score in the reference is about 715, which is generally considered good. That is one area where the average person looks better than many people assume. It means many people are at least paying bills on time and not completely destroying their credit profile. But a good credit score can be misleading. Credit is a tool. It is not wealth. A high credit score tells lenders that you are likely to repay borrowed money. It does not tell you that you own much. It does not tell you that you are financially free. It does not tell you that your balance sheet is strong. Some people have excellent credit scores and very little net worth. They are skilled borrowers. That is different from being wealthy still. A good credit score matters because it affects mortgage rates, car loans, credit approvals, and sometimes even employment or rental applications. A weak credit score makes life more expensive. A strong credit score reduces friction. The basic principles are not complicated. Pay on time, avoid maxing out cards, do not open unnecessary accounts, and keep debt levels reasonable. But knowing the rule and living the rule are different things, which brings us to credit card debt. One of the clearest signs of financial stress in the average household. The reference says the average household carries more than $9,000 in credit card debt. $9,000, that is not a mortgage against a house. That is not a business loan against productive assets. That is usually accumulated consumption, meals, clothes, electronics, travel, emergencies, convenience purchases, and small decisions that compounded into a large liability. The real problem is not just the $9,000. It is the interest rate attached to it at 15, 20, or 25%. Credit card debt becomes a compounding machine working against you. If you pay 20% interest on $9,000, you can lose roughly $1,800 a year just to interest. That is money that could have gone into investments, emergency savings, retirement accounts, or debt freedom. Instead, it flows to the credit card company. This is one of the clearest examples of what I call being on the wrong side of compounding. Compounding is not automatically your friend. It depends which side of the equation you are on. If you own productive assets, compounding can work for you. If you owe high-interest debt, compounding works against you with no mercy. That is why paying off credit card debt should usually come before chasing investment returns. There is no logic in trying to earn 7 or 8% in the market while paying 20% on a credit card balance. That is like trying to sail forward while dragging an anchor behind the boat. The solution is simple, but emotionally hard. Stop adding to the balance, pay more than the minimum, attack the highest interest debt first, and do not treat available credit as available money. Credit card companies make money when people confuse those two things. Available credit is not wealth. It is permission to become poorer if used badly. Now let us talk about net worth, because net worth is a more honest number than income, credit score, or lifestyle. Net worth is what you own, minus what you owe. Your house, investments, bank accounts, retirement accounts, vehicles, and other assets on one side, mortgage, credit cards, student loans, car loans, personal loans, and other liabilities on the other side. The reference gives the median net worth for American households at about $122,000. That number changes a lot by age under 35. The median net worth is less than $14,000 between 35 and 44. It rises to about $91,000 between 45 and 54, about $168,000. Between 55 and 64, about $212,000. Between 65 and 74, about $266,000. These numbers are not impossible. They are not reserved for geniuses. They are not available only to people who started companies or traded stocks perfectly. They are mostly the result of simple behaviors repeated for a long time. Earning, spending less than you earn, avoiding destructive debt, buying assets, letting time work, and not panicking at the wrong moments. That is both encouraging and sobering. It is encouraging because doing better than average does not require magic. It requires discipline and consistency. It is sobering because the average result is still not especially strong. A household can reach retirement age with a net worth that sounds respectable but still not have enough liquid income. Producing assets to feel secure. A house can be part of net worth, but you cannot easily spend a bedroom. A paid-off car may count as an asset, but it does not produce income. A retirement account may look large, but may need to support decades of living. So when you measure net worth, look not only at the number, but at the quality of the assets. Are they liquid? Do they produce income? Do they grow? Are they diversified? Are they protected from bad decisions? A high net worth built on an illiquid house and little cash is different from a balanced net worth built on investments, reserves, and low debt. The structure matters. Now we need to examine savings rates, because the savings rate is one of the strongest predictors of future freedom. The reference says Americans save about 6% of their after-tax income. 6% may sound like something, but for most people it is not enough. If you save 6% and some of that has to go towards short-term goals, such as a car, a home down payment, repairs, holidays, or emergencies, there may be very little left for long-term investing. Most financial experts suggest saving at least 10 to 15% of income, specifically for retirement. If you want to retire early or have a large margin of safety, the number probably needs to be higher. This is where people often resist the math. They say, I cannot save more. Sometimes that is true. There are people with very tight incomes and unavoidable expenses. But many households are not unable to save. They are organized around spending. Their lifestyle has expanded to fill the available income. A 6% savings rate means 94% is being consumed, taxed, or committed elsewhere. That gives very little room for error. If you can raise your savings rate from 6% to 10%, then 15%, then 20%, the entire trajectory changes. Not because any one month feels dramatic, but because the system begins to produce surplus consistently. Surplus is the seed of wealth. Without surplus, there is no investing. Without investing, there is no compounding. Without compounding, there is no financial independence. This is why I care less about how someone looks financially and more about how their system behaves. Does money leave faster than it enters? Does debt grow faster than assets? Does consumption rise every time income rises? Does saving happen automatically? Does investing occur before lifestyle expansion? These are systems questions. They determine outcomes. Now let us talk about retirement age. The reference says the average retirement age in America is around 61. At first, that sounds good. Retiring at 61 sounds early compared with the traditional idea of working until 65 or 67. But the key question is not when people stop working. The key question is whether they can afford to stop working. Full Social Security benefits may not be available until later, depending on birth year and claiming strategy. If someone retires at 61 and must bridge several years before larger benefits begin, they need assets, savings, or another income source. If their retirement account has only $88,000, that bridge can be fragile. Then there is the length of retirement. Someone retiring at 61 might need to fund 25 years or more. That is a long time to support yourself without employment income. And then there is the health question. Retiring early may give you more healthy years, but it also requires more money. Retiring late gives your money more time, but your body may not allow you to enjoy as much. There is no perfect answer. There is only a trade-off. The important thing is to make the decision deliberately, not by default. Many people do not really retire at 61 because their plan succeeded. They retire because they got pushed out, burned out, sick, downsized, or physically unable to keep going. That is a very different kind of retirement. A strong financial plan gives you choice. A weak one leaves you dependent on circumstances. That is why these average numbers should not be viewed as destiny. They are a warning light. The average person earns around $52,000 individually, spends heavily at the household level, has modest retirement savings, carries meaningful credit card debt, saves about 6%, and may stop working earlier than their assets can comfortably support. That is normal, but normal and wise are not the same thing. Normal means common. It does not mean safe. It does not mean effective. It does not mean intelligent. It simply means many people are doing it. If many people are financially stressed, then copying many people will make you financially stressed. That is the central lesson. Once you know the average, you can decide whether you want to remain average, and the bar is not as high as most people think. If you save more than 6%, avoid credit card debt, keep housing and transportation under control, invest consistently, understand what you own, and make decisions based on long-term principles, instead of short-term pressure, you will likely move ahead of a large portion of the population. Not immediately, not dramatically, not in a way that wins attention on social media, but steadily, and steady is what works. If the average household spends about $5,500 a month and you can live well on $4,500, that $1,000 gap becomes $12,000 a year. Invest that gap consistently for decades and you are playing a different game. If the average household carries $9,000 in credit card debt and you carry none, you have removed one of the most destructive leaks in your system. If the average person saves 6% and you save 15 or 20, the compounding difference over 30 years becomes enormous. If the average person waits until late in life to take retirement seriously and you begin early, time does a large part of the work for you. The difference between average and excellent is often not one huge decision. It is a cluster of small decisions made consistently. Spend less than the typical household on cars. Avoid high-interest debt, increase income gradually. Automate savings, invest in low-cost diversified assets, keep an emergency fund. Do not inflate lifestyle every time income rises. Do not confuse social appearance with financial health. These are simple ideas. They are not easy because they require going against the behavior of the crowd, and going against the crowd is emotionally difficult. When your friends upgrade their cars, you will feel pressure. When your neighbors renovate their kitchens, you will feel pressure. When social media shows vacations, watches, meals, and houses, you will feel pressure. But pressure is not an instruction. It is only a signal. The intelligent person separates signal from noise. If someone looks richer but has no savings, no retirement plan, and credit card debt, that is not success. That is fragility wearing nice clothes. If someone looks ordinary but has no high-interest debt, a growing investment account, and a widening gap between income and expenses, that is strength. The world often rewards appearance in the short run and discipline in the long run. I would rather be rewarded in the long run. Another important lesson from these numbers is that you should not use average as an excuse. Some people hear that the median retirement balance is low and feel relieved. They think, I am not that far behind. Other people hear that many Americans have credit card debt and feel less urgency to pay theirs off. That is the wrong conclusion. The fact that many people are struggling does not make struggle a good strategy. It only tells you that many people have made decisions or faced circumstances that put them in a weak position. Use the numbers as a benchmark, not as permission. If you are behind, the right response is not shame. Shame usually makes people avoid the subject. The right response is clarity. Where am I? What is the gap? What is the first lever I can pull? Do I need to reduce expenses? Increase income, pay debt, build savings, invest more, or simply stop making the same mistake every month? Financial progress usually begins with one honest measurement. Most people do not measure because measurement can be painful. But not measuring does not make the problem disappear. It only delays the day of reckoning. You cannot improve what you refuse to see. If you are already ahead of these averages, do not become complacent. Being ahead of a weak average is not the same as being secure. You may have no credit card debt, but too little invested. You may have strong income but high lifestyle inflation. You may have a good credit score but poor liquidity. You may have a decent retirement account but no plan for healthcare costs or market downturns. The question is not simply, am I better than average? The better question is my system strong enough to handle bad years? Because life does not move in a straight line. There will be job losses, recessions, medical bills, family obligations, inflation shocks, market declines, and emotional mistakes. A good financial system is not one that works only when everything goes well. It is one that survives when things go badly. That is why the foundation matters. Emergency reserves reduce panic, low debt reduces fragility, consistent investing builds future income. Diversification reduces dependency on one outcome. A savings habit creates options, and a clear understanding of your numbers prevents self-deception. When I look at the average person's financial statistics, I do not see a failure of intelligence. I see a failure of principles, education, and environment. Most people were never taught the basics clearly. They were taught how to work, not how to build a balance sheet. They were taught how to borrow, not how to compound. They were marketed cars, houses, phones, clothes, and lifestyles before they were taught cash flow, savings rates, and net worth. Then, when they struggle, the system tells them it is a personal flaw. I do not think that is accurate, but responsibility still matters. Once you see the system, you have to decide how to operate within it. You can keep doing what average people do and hope for above average results. Or you can build a different set of habits. The numbers give you the map. The average income shows you what the middle looks like. The retirement savings numbers show you how dangerous undersaving becomes. The Social Security number shows you why one income source is not enough. The spending data shows you where the pressure comes from. The credit score data shows you that borrowing access is common, but not the same as wealth. The credit card debt number shows you how compounding destroys people when it works against them. The net worth numbers show you what time and discipline can produce. The savings rate shows you why most people remain stuck. The retirement age shows you how long the plan must last. And the conclusion is straightforward. Do not aim to be average. Average is too fragile. Average is too exposed. Average is too dependent on things outside its control. Aim to build a system that is better than average in the areas that matter most. More surplus, less bad debt, more productive assets, more liquidity, more patience, and better decisions under pressure. You do not need to become a genius. You do not need to predict markets. You do not need to catch the perfect stock. You do not need to impress people. You need to stop bleeding money where the average person bleeds money. You need to keep more of what you earn. You need to invest the difference. You need to give compounding enough time, and you need to avoid decisions that destroy decades of progress for short-term status. That is the real advantage. When you understand what normal looks like, you can choose not to be normal. That choice may not look exciting today. It may mean driving a less impressive car. It may mean living in a slightly smaller house. It may mean saying no to spending that other people consider routine. It may mean paying off a credit card while someone else is booking another trip. But over time, those choices separate people. One group looks comfortable and becomes trapped. The other group looks disciplined and becomes free. The average numbers show you where the first group is headed. Your actions decide whether you join them.